Hi, my name is Samantha, and I'm 30 years old. What should have been the happiest day of my life, the day I graduated, turned into a nightmare. You won't believe this, but my own parents tried to poison me at my graduation party. And to make it worse, I didn't find out until it was almost too late. I'm here to tell you the shocking truth about what happened and how it changed my life forever. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved, or if you've ever felt trapped by someone's control over your life, stay with me. What I'm about to share isn't just a story about me. It's about transformation, justice, and taking your life back from those who think they can control you. Before we dive in, hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready for a story that will make you think twice about who you trust. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's a powerful journey about reclaiming your life and standing up for what's right. The day of my graduation should have been one of the happiest days of my life. The excitement was palpable, the air thick with joy, laughter, and anticipation. I had worked so hard for this moment, countless late nights studying, balancing work, and pushing through personal struggles. It was supposed to be a celebration of my achievement, a time to reflect on how far I had come. But as I stood there, smiling for the cameras, surrounded by people who were supposed to be proud of me, a strange feeling began to creep in. It started with my parents, specifically my father. He was acting different, and I couldn't quite place it. His usual proud, confident demeanor seemed forced today. He kept glancing at me, but there was something unsettling in his eyes, something I had never seen before. His smile seemed too wide, his movements too exaggerated. I tried to brush it off, attributing it to the stress of the day. After all, who wouldn't be a little on edge when their child was about to graduate? But then there was my mom. She was always the calm one, the one who made everything seem okay no matter what. But today, her usual soothing presence was clouded with a noticeable tension. She kept giving my father these strange looks, almost as though they were communicating in a way that no one else could understand. I didn't know it then, but this was just the beginning of the slow reveal that would change my life forever. As the evening unfolded, the party became more of a blur. There were speeches, toasts, and laughter echoing around the room, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. My parents were acting unusually attentive, hovering around me more than usual. Every time I turned around, they were there, watching me with expressions I couldn't interpret. "Here, have another drink," my mom said, pressing a glass into my hand with a soft smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The drink was a deep amber color, and I had already had a few. "You deserve to celebrate, sweetheart," she added, her voice overly sweet. At first, I didn't think much of it. After all, they were my parents, and they only wanted what was best for me. But something in my gut told me this wasn't normal. My parents had never been the type to push alcohol on me. Sure, they were proud, but this wasn't how they usually celebrated. They were supposed to be enjoying the day too, not hovering over me like this. I hesitated for a moment, staring at the drink in my hand. The bitter aftertaste of the first sip lingered in my mouth, and I tried to shake it off as a product of nerves. But as I continued to drink, the odd sensation grew stronger. My limbs felt heavy, and my head began to spin. I felt the room sway slightly, and a wave of nausea washed over me. I put the glass down, trying to steady myself, but the dizziness only seemed to intensify. "Are you okay, honey?" my dad asked, his voice overly concerned. There was something off in his tone. It wasn't the usual caring concern of a father checking on his daughter. No, this was different. It was almost as though he were too concerned. "I'm fine," I replied, forcing a smile, but my voice came out shaky. I didn't want to make a scene, especially not in front of everyone. I was supposed to be the center of attention. This was my moment, but it didn't feel like my moment anymore. As the night wore on, I started to piece together other strange occurrences. Memories of my parents' behavior in the past began to surface, painting a clearer picture of who they really were. Over the years, I had always felt like my relationship with them was strained, but I had never understood why. My father was a man of control, always wanting things his way, dictating my decisions and pushing me to follow his plans for my future. He'd always been proud of my academic achievements, but there was an undercurrent of disappointment when I chose a career path that wasn't in line with his vision. My mother, on the other hand, was more passive, but there was something in her silence that spoke volumes. She never stood up to my father, and as I grew older, I realized she had always enabled his behavior, even when it meant sacrificing her own happiness. Now, in this moment, I could see the truth. Their love for me had always come with conditions. The love I thought was unconditional was actually manipulative, suffocating and driven by their need to control my life. And tonight, on the night of my graduation, I was starting to realize just how far they were willing to go to maintain that control. It wasn't until much later in the evening that I began to truly suspect what was happening. I had excused myself from the party for a moment, trying to regain some composure, but when I looked at myself in the mirror, I didn't recognize the person staring back at me. My skin was pale, my eyes glassy, and my breathing shallow. My heart pounded in my chest, and every movement felt like I was wading through thick fog. That's when I saw it, the glass. Sitting on the counter, half empty, was the drink they had been pushing at me all night. And as I looked closer, I noticed something I hadn't seen before, the faintest trace of a powdery substance clinging to the sides of the glass. It was subtle, but it was there. Panic surged through me as I connected the dots. My parents had been acting too strangely, insisting I drink. And now this. I couldn't deny it anymore. I had been poisoned. My body felt weak. My mind clouded, but I forced myself to stand. The world seemed to tilt around me as I walked toward my parents, who were still mingling with the guests, enjoying the evening like nothing was wrong. I approached them with a sense of dread, but also determination. I couldn't let this go. "Mom, Dad," I said, my voice trembling, "what did you do?" They turned to face me, their faces unreadable. There was no guilt, no remorse in their eyes, only a sense of cold calculation. My father stepped forward, his hands clasped in front of him. "You wouldn't understand, Samantha," he said, his voice eerily calm. "We did this for you, to save you from yourself." "Save me from myself?" I echoed, my voice rising with shock and anger. "You poisoned me. You tried to kill me." He didn't flinch. "No, darling, we did what was necessary. You weren't meant to leave us. You weren't meant to go down your own path." At that moment, it hit me. Their love was never about me. It had always been about keeping me under their control, ensuring that I remained their property, their achievement. I had outgrown them, and they couldn't bear to lose their grip on me. As I stood there, the weight of the revelation crashed down on me like a tidal wave. The poison wasn't just an attack on my physical body. It was a calculated strike against everything I had worked for, everything I had hoped to achieve. It was their way of keeping me from walking away, from becoming the person I wanted to be. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. "You didn't just try to control my life, did you?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of fear and fury. "You tried to end it." My father's eyes narrowed, but he didn't look away. "You don't understand. All of this, everything we've done for you, it was because we love you. You think you know what's best for you, but you're wrong. We've been through this. You need to do things our way." I couldn't breathe. The air around me felt thick, suffocating. I took a step back, trying to make sense of the chaos swirling in my head. My parents, my own parents, had just tried to kill me because they couldn't bear to see me leave their control. They were terrified of losing their power over me, of losing their grip on my future. That's when I realized that everything in my life had led up to this moment. The career choices they didn't approve of, the relationships they tried to interfere with, the constant pressure to conform to their idea of what my life should be, it was all leading to this one final act of desperation. They were willing to destroy me to keep me where they thought I belonged. But I wasn't going to let them win. Not like this. Not ever. In that moment of clarity, I knew that the stakes were higher than I had ever imagined. It wasn't just about surviving this betrayal. It was about fighting for my freedom, my autonomy, and my future. This wasn't just a one-time incident. It was the culmination of years of control, manipulation, and emotional abuse. I had spent so much of my life trying to please them, trying to live up to their expectations. Every decision I made, every step I took, was always viewed through the lens of their desires, their rules. But in that moment, I understood that I couldn't live for them anymore. I couldn't let their control over my life dictate my future. The emotional toll of this realization hit me harder than I expected. Years of suppressed anger and frustration bubbled up to the surface, threatening to overwhelm me. But I knew I had to stay calm. I had to be strong. The road ahead was going to be tough, but it was the only road that mattered now. The road to reclaiming my life. I wasn't just fighting for my survival anymore. I was fighting for my right to live on my own terms. As the tension between us thickened, my father continued to justify his actions with an unsettling calmness. "You think this is about control, don't you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "But it's about what's best for you. You were never meant to go off on your own. You were always meant to stay with us. You've always been part of this family, part of our business. You're not some independent person, you're ours." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. The man I had always thought of as my protector was, in fact, the one who had imprisoned me. And my mother, who had always seemed so gentle and loving, was complicit in it all. She stood silently by his side, her eyes avoiding mine. "Mom, you knew?" I asked, my voice breaking. "You knew what he was doing?" She glanced up at me, her face a mask of guilt. "I didn't want this for you, Sam," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But your father, he's always had a plan. I just didn't know how to stop him." Her words stung, but in that moment I understood. She wasn't just silent because she agreed with him. She was silent because she was scared of what would happen if she went against him. The years of emotional manipulation and control had worn her down, too. She had never been strong enough to stand up to my father, and that weakness had extended to me. But in that moment, I could see it for what it was. Fear, not love. The truth hit me in waves, each revelation more painful than the last. The power dynamic in our family was nothing like I had ever imagined. My parents had built an entire world around themselves, one where I was supposed to fit into a perfect mold. They had planned my future for me, leaving no room for me to choose my own path. Every decision had been theirs. Every dream, every goal had been theirs to dictate. And now, they were willing to take everything from me to keep me trapped in that world. "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking as the realization dawned on me. "Why would you do this to me?" "Because we love you," my father replied, his voice as cold as ice. "We've always loved you, but you were never meant to leave. You're our legacy, our future." I didn't know how to respond. His words, once so comforting, now felt like shackles, each one locking me in a cage of his making. His love was a prison, and I had been living in it for years without even realizing it. The air felt thick, suffocating, as I stood there in front of them. My parents, the two people who had brought me into this world, had just revealed the darkest truth I could have ever imagined. It wasn't just the poison. It was the decades of control, the endless manipulations, the lies that had shaped every aspect of my life. And yet, in that moment, as their faces stared back at me with cold detachment, I understood something profound. They weren't just trying to control me, they were trying to destroy me. "Do you really think I'm going to let this go?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of disbelief and fury. My father didn't flinch, but I saw a flicker of something behind his eyes, a slight hesitation, almost imperceptible, as if he hadn't expected me to confront him head on. "We did this because we love you," he said, his voice calm, like it was all perfectly justified. "We've done everything for you. You've always been ours, and you always will be. You think you know what's best for you, but you don't." The words hit me like a slap across the face, and for a split second, I wondered if I had misheard him. Love? This was love? Trying to poison your child? Trying to break their spirit, all in the name of love? It was the same thing I had heard all my life. Every decision, every choice I made was met with the same justification. "We're doing this for you because we know what's best." And yet, in that moment, it became clear to me. They never cared about what I wanted. They never cared about my dreams, my goals, or my happiness. It was always about their control, their need to mold me into someone who served their vision of what was right. I couldn't keep the anger at bay anymore. It burned inside me, hot and fierce. I took a step forward, my heart pounding, but I didn't back down. "You poisoned me," I said, my voice low but steady. "You tried to kill me, to stop me from having a life of my own. And now you're trying to make it seem like you did it because you love me. Do you really think I'm that naive?" My father's expression remained unchanged, but my mother looked away, her face paling, her lips trembling slightly as though she knew the truth but was too terrified to admit it. She had always been the silent one, the one who let my father's will shape every decision. She had stood by him always, but in that moment, she was breaking. She had never fought for me, never fought for my right to make my own choices, and now I saw the weight of that. I saw her as someone just as trapped as I had been. "You have to understand," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your father, he only wanted what was best for you. We were just trying to protect you." "Protect me?" I echoed bitterly, my voice shaking now. "By keeping me under your control, by making sure I never stood a chance of having a life outside of your expectations? You didn't protect me. You suffocated me, and you've poisoned me, literally and figuratively. I can't breathe anymore. I can't live my life like this. I won't." Her silence was deafening. I could feel her regret, her guilt, hanging in the air between us, but it didn't matter. She had allowed it to happen, and that was something I could never forget. The realization that my entire life had been orchestrated by their need to control was like a bitter taste in my mouth. They weren't just parents who had tried to guide me. They were captors in my life, holding me hostage in a version of their world that I never wanted to live in. "I didn't ask for this," I continued, my voice growing stronger, more confident with every word. "I didn't ask for your approval. I didn't ask for your plans for me. All I ever wanted was to live my own life. But you tried to take that from me." My father stood up slowly, his expression hardening. You don't understand. You've always been part of our legacy, our family. You owe us." The words stung. The sense of entitlement in his voice, as if my life was somehow theirs to control, was infuriating. I had been born into their world, yes, but I was my own person. I had my own dreams, my own identity. I wasn't a pawn in their game. "You don't own me," I said through gritted teeth. "I am not your legacy. I am me. And if this is your idea of love, then I want nothing to do with it. I don't owe you anything. Not my life, not my future." The room seemed to close in around us, the silence stretching on for what felt like hours. My father opened his mouth to speak again, but I cut him off, my words sharp and final. "Number, I don't need your apology. I don't need your excuses. I just need you to understand that I'm done. Done living in your shadow. Done with your control. Done with your lies." For the first time in my life, I saw something flicker in his eyes, something that looked like a crack in his facade. But it wasn't regret. It wasn't guilt. It was something darker, something that told me he would never accept this. But it didn't matter. I had already made my decision. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice steady and resolute, "and I'm never coming back. Not as the person you wanted me to be. I'm leaving as me, and nothing you say or do can change that." There was no grand gesture, no explosion of anger, just a deep, oppressive silence as the finality of my words hung in the air. My parents didn't say anything. My mother's face crumpled in sorrow while my father's expression darkened, but both were speechless. There was nothing left for me to say. I turned and walked away from them, from the years of manipulation, from the suffocating grip they had held on my life. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know what I would do next, but I knew one thing. For the first time in my life, I was free. As I stepped outside, the cold night air hit me like a shock, and I took a deep breath, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. The future was uncertain, but it was mine to claim. I wasn't my father's daughter. I wasn't my mother's possession. I was me, finally, truly free to be who I was meant to be. As I walked away from that final confrontation, my heart still pounded in my chest, my mind racing. It felt like an earthquake had just ripped through my life, and I was left standing amidst the rubble, trying to piece together what had just happened. I had confronted the truth, and in that moment, everything that had once seemed normal in my life had been shattered. The layers of lies that had been building for years now lay exposed, and I couldn't look away. Truth, something I had always been told was the most important thing, had never felt so painful. The realization that my parents, the people I trusted most in the world, had been hiding such darkness from me was a bitter pill to swallow. But it was also the key to my freedom. The truth, however painful, was the only thing that could set me free. For years, I had been living in a fog of uncertainty. I had known, on some level, that something was wrong, but I had never been able to put my finger on it. I had been blinded by the idea of family, by the hope that they loved me the way I loved them. Now, I saw things clearly. The truth had been there all along, buried beneath the facade of caring gestures and words of affection. It wasn't love, it was control, it was manipulation, and it had nearly cost me my life. The struggle for truth wasn't just about exposing their lies. It was about reclaiming my own identity. It was about shedding the false narrative they had created for me, the one where I was nothing more than an extension of their desires and expectations. I had spent so many years trying to live up to their version of who I should be, but now I was done. I needed to find the truth about who I was, and that meant breaking free from their grip once and for all. As I took a deep breath, Walking away from the wreckage of my past, I realized just how deeply I had been manipulated. It wasn't just the poison or the control over my future. It was the years of emotional manipulation that had shaped who I was. They had convinced me time and time again that I wasn't enough unless I was what they wanted me to be. The seeds of doubt had been planted in my mind long ago. You'll never make it on your own. You'll always need us to guide you. You can't survive without our help. These were the messages I had received from the moment I could understand words, and over time, I had internalized them, believing that I couldn't be successful without their approval, their constant presence in my life. The worst part was how seamlessly they had woven this web of control around me. It wasn't just forceful or overt, it was subtle, insidious. It came in the form of concern, advice, and love. They made it seem like everything they did was for my benefit, but I began to see through it. Their love was a weapon. Their affection was a chain. They had used it all to keep me in line, to keep me from living a life of my own choosing. And now I had to fight against that manipulation, not just in the form of their direct actions, but in the way it had affected my sense of self. I had to unlearn the beliefs they had drilled into me. I had to remind myself that I was worthy of independence, that I was capable of making my own choices. This fight wasn't just about them. It was about me, reclaiming the person I had always been, underneath all the layers of manipulation. I wasn't just going to walk away from this. I had seen too much, been through too much, to simply let it all fade into the background. My parents' betrayal wasn't something I could just ignore, and it wasn't just about getting revenge. It was about seeking justice. Justice wasn't just about punishing my parents for what they had done. It was about making sure that no one else had to go through what I had. It was about showing that no one had the right to manipulate, control, or poison someone's life in the name of love. Justice meant standing up for the truth and making sure it was heard. It meant showing others that they had the right to break free from toxic relationships, no matter who those relationships were with. At first, I wasn't sure how to begin this pursuit of justice. I'd never imagined I would find myself in a position where I would need to fight against the people who raised me. But as the days passed and I reflected on everything that had happened, I knew that I couldn't remain silent. I couldn't let this be swept under the rug. My story mattered. My truth mattered. And it needed to be told. So I began to think about what steps I could take. I knew that exposing my parents to the world, revealing their toxic control over me, would come with consequences. But I also knew it was the right thing to do. Not just for me, but for anyone else who had been trapped in a similar situation. There were others out there who needed to hear this, who needed to know that they weren't alone, that breaking free was possible. For a while, I was consumed with the idea of revenge. They had betrayed me in the most horrible way. They had tried to destroy me, not just emotionally, but physically. The anger that boiled inside me was almost overwhelming. I wanted them to suffer. I wanted them to feel the same pain I had felt for years. But as the days passed, something started to shift inside me. Revenge, while tempting, was empty. It would never give me what I truly needed. What I needed was peace. What I needed was freedom. And that wasn't something that could be attained through revenge. Revenge was a quick fix, a momentary sense of satisfaction that wouldn't last. But redemption would be the key to my healing. Choosing redemption didn't mean letting them off the hook. It didn't mean forgiving them for what they had done. It meant that I was taking control of my own life, choosing to heal instead of holding on to the bitterness and anger. It meant that I was choosing to move forward, to build a future that was free from the toxicity of my past. It was hard to let go of the idea of revenge. The desire to make them feel the same pain I had felt was strong. But I understood, deep down, that redemption was the only path that would truly set me free. Revenge would only keep me trapped in the same cycle. Redemption, on the other hand, would give me the peace and power I needed to move on with my life. The days following the revelation were a blur of emotions, anger, confusion, and deep sadness. I'd always known my parents were overbearing, but I had never imagined they would go this far. They had taken everything from me, and in doing so, they had robbed themselves of the opportunity to be part of my real life. But I couldn't let them control me anymore. I had to confront them one last time. I had to close this chapter of my life, no matter how painful it was. The evening was quiet, too quiet. My parents sat in the living room as if nothing had happened. There was no apology in their eyes, no sense of remorse. My father was the first to speak, his voice cold and unwavering. "You don't understand, Samantha," he said, his tone still filled with that same arrogance. "We did what was necessary. You'll never make it on your own. You were meant to stay here, to live your life according to our plans." My stomach churned with disgust, but I kept my voice steady. "No, you did what was convenient for you, what you wanted. You never cared about what I wanted. You never cared about me. Not really." There was no response. My mother, sitting beside my father, didn't say a word. She just stared at me, as if she couldn't comprehend what had happened. I had spent so many years wanting her approval, needing her to step in and stop my father, but I finally understood. She wasn't going to. She never would. "Don't you see," I continued, the words coming easier now. "I'm not the person you made me out to be. I'm not a puppet for your control. I'm not your property. I'm a person. I have dreams, goals, a life that isn't about you. I never asked for your approval, but you didn't give me any other choice." My father's expression hardened, but this time I didn't back down. I stood my ground, looking him in the eye for the first time ever, unflinching. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of him. I wasn't afraid of anyone. "You've had your control over me for far too long," I said, my voice ringing with finality. "But I'm done. This is the last time you'll see me like this. I won't be coming back, and I won't be living my life for you anymore." My father's face turned red with anger. "You're making a huge mistake, Samantha. You think you can live without us? You'll fail. You'll come crawling back." I shook my head slowly, the finality of my decision settling in my chest like a weight lifted from my heart. "Number, I won't. I'm going to live my life. I don't need you to define who I am anymore." For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence between us was deafening. My parents sat there, stunned, as if they hadn't expected this turn of events. They didn't know how to react, but I did. I knew exactly what had to happen next. I turned and walked toward the door. My heart was pounding, my body trembling with both fear and exhilaration. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't afraid of their judgment or their threats. I was free. As I opened the door and stepped into the cool night air, I felt the weight of the years of emotional torment fall away. My parents had spent my entire life shaping me into someone I wasn't, but now I was stepping into the world as the person I was always meant to be, unapologetically myself. The first few weeks after I left were difficult. There were moments of doubt, moments where I wondered if I had made the right decision. But every time those thoughts crept in, I reminded myself of the truth. My parents' version of love had been a cage, and now I was free. free to make my own decisions, free to follow my own dreams, and free to define my future on my own terms. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe. I started to rebuild my life from the ground up. I found a new apartment, settled into a routine, and began focusing on my career, something I had put on hold for far too long. I reconnected with friends I had lost touch with, people who supported me and loved me for who I truly was. And slowly, I began to rediscover parts of myself that had been buried beneath the weight of my parents' expectations. I started doing things that made me happy, things I had once thought were impossible, things that were mine and not dictated by anyone else. I traveled, I explored new passions, and I learned how to live for myself. The journey wasn't easy. There were moments when the fear and doubt crept in, when I wondered if I was really strong enough to continue. But each time, I reminded myself of how far I had come. I had survived the poison, physically, yes, but more importantly, I had survived the poison of my parents' control, and I was stronger because of it. In those moments of weakness, I found strength. I found the courage to keep going, to keep moving forward. And every day, I realized that I was more than capable of living my life on my own terms. I began to embrace my independence, my voice, my power. I wasn't defined by anyone else anymore. I was me, and that was enough. The final closure came in the form of a simple but profound realization. The only person who could control my life, who could shape my future, was me. I had walked away from everything I had ever known, the lies, the manipulation, the toxic love, and I had chosen to live my truth. The future wasn't certain, but it was mine to create. And for the first time in my life, I felt empowered to build it. To anyone reading this, know that you are not alone. You don't have to live under the shadow of anyone else's control. You are worthy of living a life that is yours, a life that aligns with your dreams, your passions, and your truth. If you're feeling trapped, if you're questioning your worth, remember this: you have the strength to break free. Take the first step toward reclaiming your life. It won't be easy, but it will be worth it. And if you've been through something similar, share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how you fought for your freedom. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Let's keep the conversation going, and remember, you are the author of your own story.